Oh, hey, look, this is the Airbnb we found. Look at that. They're putting it on the market.
Hey Airbnb family, I've got something really cool for you today. Follow along with me as I go through market research with one of my students. The techniques that I teach in this video apply both to pricing strategy against competition and finding great properties to Airbnb. So whether you're a host or not there yet, this video is for you. You're gonna love it.
The goal of this will be not just for me to do all of the research for you, but to guide you through the research process so you'll be able to do it. Just so you know, so it's going to go a little bit probably differently than you may expect.
These the one you're looking at, they're all basically Pompano, Fort Lauderdale. They're all like within the same area. But
Cool.
that's it, just that section. And then the next one is like Delroy. Then there's one for Boca.
You've got different houses here. You've got one that's a 5 bed, one that's a 4, one that's a 1. We'll have to do two separate bits of market research for this. So if we go to Airbnb and just start searching Pompano Beach, we're going to try to identify what we believe to be the best properties in Pompano. And we could try to do it by size because there's going to be a market for smaller listings and a market for larger ones. We just need to know which one is the best is going to be our goal. So we're going to switch. Look, I'm flexible. We're going to start with 2 guests, okay, to do the apartment one first.
Are we adding pets?
No, we're not. We're looking for what Airbnb serves immediately is
Okay.
really what we're getting at. So now for apartments, we can go to filters and we can go and just filter out houses and just do apartments, just like that. We will see what Airbnb serves up to be the best apartments in Pompano Beach. Okay. Now we can make a determination from these listings which ones Airbnb likes the most and why. The first thing we notice, see all of these bubbles are on this main drag that's in between the channel and the ocean here.
Yes.
Okay. So what they're telling you is anything that's left of this body of water is not the best. Make sense?
Yep.
So now any apartments that you look for should be here, right? Immediately, according to the initial Pompano search. All right. Now
Yep.
there is still consideration. There could be some that's on near South Dixie Highway or some that's still along this road here too. And if they're cheap enough to offset the less revenue that they get, then they could still be worth your time. But
Yep.
immediately we're looking for what is at the top of Airbnb's funnel where they think they're going to make the most money because you want to work with the algorithm. We got condos on the water. This bungalow is actually marked as an apartment, and it's actually not. It's like a guest house, most likely. Okay. This one here looks like it's also a guest house, but we'll find out here in a second. This one's like small, it's clean, so it's well done. So far, the top 3 in apartments are actually guest house or condos. This actually looks like a little apartment complex that somebody owns.
Yep. Small apartment complex.
Yeah, and all those apartments are on there. So this is highly location relevant. This would be a really cool multifamily play to pick up something like this and fix it. Obviously, this is something at the top of Airbnb's algorithm. So at a higher level, once you're doing more, you can actually look for little distressed multifamilies or little distressed hotels that just people have like not been servicing and find something along the strip and do it. That might be really hard to find because by the time I'm giving you this advice, that's already common knowledge, right? But that'd be an example of where market research can take us in a certain direction. As we go down, we're looking for real apartment complexes. This one looks like a real apartment complex, actually. So now what's cool about this, though, is we can find what apartment complex this is, by the way. So let's just open this in a new tab, save that for later. But right now, we're still looking at the market. We're not looking at individual competitors. We're looking to see what Airbnb is pushing. And so we've got a lot of like little, like single floor mini tiny apartment complexes that are all location driven. What we're seeing right now is location is the most important part for an apartment in Pompano, right? So if you're going to do an apartment complex, it's all these little tiny ones that are along the water, right? And then we can try to prove that these are making money by going into the calendar, seeing the calendar. This one's blocked until April, which means they either have a tenant and then they non-renewed the person or something like that, right? And so this one's not going to give us a lot of consideration. We could look at these guest houses, but I think they're like less relevant. So then we could take a look at this one here. See, this one's got 86 reviews. So we take a look at this little mini apartment complex with a pool. We can see the quality of the listing and see the listing is actually super generic on the inside. This lets us know what our investment implications are for competition. This is so location relevant that they've really just decided not to do much with the inside. They expect no one to hang out in the property at all. It looks much more like a hotel room than an actual apartment. And we can check to see if they actually even have a kitchen because this could just be a hotel room marked as a apartment. But no, it's a studio. The refrigerator over here is really weird, but they made it work. They probably did a hotel conversion actually. They should be getting bookings. They're really not here. So we can look at the reviews and see when do they get bookings. October, August. They've got a lot of reviews, but they've been on here for a long time, as it looks like. This unit's been around a long time. And that actually is a little concerning because right now it's December, right? So this person stayed one night in October, stayed a few nights in October, and then it skips back to August. That's really not solid. So this like location relevant but dinky interior, the low investment on the interior is not working. So this strategy is failing. This one we can't see because they're not open for months, so we can't use that to try to validate apartments. We can continue to go and hunt down other apartments. This one's got 306 reviews. Now we might find that this apartment kind of has the same, actually no, it looks cuter. Okay, so that's important. So this one is more cute than the other one, right? They've actually done some stuff with it, wallpaper, matching blanket, nothing crazy. And then, yeah, look, they've got bookings. They've got 1 week open in January, but they've got bookings in February and stuff. So this unit is working. We can also go look at their reviews and see, stayed a few nights 4 days ago, stayed a few nights in November. That's not a lot of action, right? That's a little concerning. But their future calendar looks good. And they've got 1, 2, 3 stays in October, September. I do have a theory with these lower price listings, people might be leaving reviews less often. Right? People leave reviews about 70% of the time, but that is an Airbnb engagement metric. And lower listings, people may not leave reviews. Just it might happen, right? There's a certain type of person that doesn't. So we might say that 50% of her guests actually leave. But this listing seems to be working for her. But again, the main things that we noticed about this listing are its location and now its price. So let's go take a look at the price on this. So right now she's 94 a night through these days. If we go here and look at her weekend prices, she's got 3-night minimum. Weekend prices are 137. It's not bad considering the product. Her weekday prices. Okay, so she's really not changing rates per weekend, it looks like. Weekend, she's not changing her rates. So there's already a little bit of underperformance here. Okay, so she starts to come down, and then she's doing it based on like maybe last minute discounts or some very slight. If she did it with Price Labs, it would make no sense because everything else would be changing too. So she's probably got her own like little thing that she's doing that inside of 28 days, it starts to come down, but then inside of like 14 days, it drops even more. She just might be using last minute discounts in that sense. She still has a 3-night minimum there. Yeah, she's just using last minute discounts. She's not doing anything with rule sets or anything. She's not really considering to change her minimum length of stay strategy. So that's things that we get to know about the operator now. As far as amenities goes, she is just a little studio apartment, but does she have anything notable? She doesn't have a pool. She's just location driven. Little studio apartment, location driven. She's over here, right? We just kind of found her. I doubt that there's really much inventory where she is. This little spot here might actually still be a little guest house. If we see this neighborhood, it doesn't really look like it's got apartment complexes, right? So if we look for an apartment complex that's between 5th Street and 1st, Southeast 5th and 1st, that's how we would look for it on Google Maps, right? But I see only one potential building, which is this one over here, that may be an apartment complex, really, right? So I don't think you could actually get in on her building per se. But what we've now been able to identify is at this price point of like she goes down to 90, but then she's also, at 130 throughout here, we were able to see kind of what she's getting booked at. She's getting booked at the 130s in February and March. And then as she drops down, she drops into the 90s, right? That's her lead time strategy. When we go to VRBO, we can see, and she doesn't really do anything else, right? It looks like she doesn't do anything too extravagant. We know that her prices are working in this season. We just don't know if her prices would work in slow season. That's not the part we can get. We can look at her reviews, but like I noticed, I don't think she gets a high percentage of her guests leaving reviews. That's what it looks like to me. We can look at the chart here. Yeah, so October, September, and November are actually a little bit weaker. And then, of course, December and then January through March or even April, you could say, is like her peak. So the fact that she's got booked here for those rates means that her prices are correct for peak season. And then her absence of reviews could actually be that her pricing strategy is actually bad for the rest of the years. Because if we go to April or May here, if she's still marked at 137, then she's got a mistake. So she's making a mistake by being at 137 going into lower months, right? Where 137 worked in February, March, she should be higher here and then lower there. So she's not running an elegant pricing strategy. And we know that she's getting bookings in this season, but we can't actually know that she's going to get bookings the rest of the year. And this property is not really that special. It's really just location driven. When we go look at her reviews, we actually see a couple in May and then one in August. It's like she blew through June and July. So she's actually screwed up there. So yeah, her pricing strategy, she's not getting anything in slow season. So the 137 isn't working. So her prices would have to come down. is what we know there. So to go back to your list, if we were going to do apartments in Pompano at that quality, which location is the primary marker so far, right? This area.
Yeah.
Location is what Airbnb wants to serve you because that's what everybody books. Well, what Airbnb is serving us is affordable stuff or guest houses. Guest houses cost more money that have pools, private pools, right? So you can try to find little guest houses with private pools, but people are probably already Airbnb-ing those. That's going to be a really weird thing to do. These apartments that probably people own these and are doing multiple. That's probably what's going on with these. Those are probably multifamily conversions done by a little group. And then these little cheaper apartments, but these cheaper apartments are like pushed under $100 most days, and then they go up to 130. So I don't really think apartments is a viable strategy for these products. So now we can try to see if we can find something that actually works more on the business side. So we just go here and actually remove all the water stuff completely and see what happens over here. So there's a bunch of apartments over here. None of them really have a high number of reviews. We can actually fast forward and just actually scroll through the page and see if we find anything with a lot of reviews. And so far we got one that's 59, this one right here. So we're going to look at that in a second. This one has 42 and this one has 56. So the 59 and 56 are actually both the same building. So we're actually going to look at those. It's on the water, like not swimmable water, but it's on the water. Person did a really fun job with their spot, like the wallpaper and stuff. They actually put in a lot of consideration into their design. That's a big deal because again, we're looking at our competition and going, who can we beat? They're taking these very basic apartments. If we looked at the exterior here, these are not fancy apartments. You can tell by their age, right? But they're on some water.
Yeah.
People do like, and they're taking these kind of really busted units and they're making them a home. Right? They're making them pretty. So this is actually a big undertaking for this, right? And so now they don't have any they don't have any upcoming stays, which actually is now concerning, right? So even at this quality, they don't have a lot of stays. They got a 3-night minimum stay. They're 260 night, which is absolutely that's their problem, right?
It's kind of low quality for that price.
Yeah, 463 night. They've completely missed the mark, right? They could actually have just like might be in trouble on their price lab settings. They probably are
Yeah.
using price labs and they just jack their rates way too high, right? Because if we go to May, we should see a drop in rates down to like maybe 190 or something.
Right.
But they did 6 night stay there. So yeah, so 204. Based on price labs, I would expect a drop down into like the 190s based on that, like looking at seasonality as a whole. They're doing really price inappropriate strategy for these. So now the thing is if their prices were correct, yeah, they go down to 2.9 minimum, meaning they're probably using price labs, right? And they are improperly priced. So these units probably have validity, but they're forward, like their calendars just crushed because they don't know how to use price labs. So they did get a booking a day ago, or left a day ago, left a week ago, left 3 weeks ago. So their last minute prices are actually getting them some bookings, but their future prices are terrible. So yesterday, a week ago, 3 weeks ago, this is good. And then November, cool. October, if they got 4 reviews in October, that means their last minute booking strategy is working. Yeah, they got 4 reviews in October. So this listing is relevant. This listing is relevant, but their pricing strategy is completely whack. Okay. So now with that said, what prices will they get booked at? Let's see if we can actually find this other one. Let's see if it's the same host or not. That's the next thing we're going to look at. Palm Wave stays. They don't have any future bookings again, probably because they're being silly. Yep, 247 again. So now the question is there anybody but Palm Wave stays? Yeah, okay, so their weekend prices aren't 460 this time. That's interesting. So now we can go and like zoom in on these two and see if there's anybody else that's not Palm Wave stays and see how many total listings there are by zooming in on this property. So there's 10 if any of these are other hosts. Actually, let's look for a real difference in price, 107. But yeah, they all look the same, which means they probably are all Palm Wave stays. I think that this person has completely screwed up and they've proven a market to some degree in this area, but they've made a huge mistake. Now, the issue with this is if we went and competed with apartments here and they got their shit together, they then become a real competitor, right? Because they have inventory and they've got good inventory, but they're just pricing all wrong. Now, this might mean that Coconut Creek has some validity, right? So in this area, any week, we've got 274. Now, if we wanted to see like whether people are booked through Christmas, we can just go like this and try to get in the same map view, back out. There's about 53 places in this Coconut Creek area, right? So out of the 273, it's 80% booked over Christmas. Let's go the holiday after Christmas or the weekend after the holiday down to 38, right? So out of the 274 units that are available here, they're down to 38, which means they've got over 80% absorption. So that's something to note, right? And we can then do this in other areas too. And this could be the part where you can go neighborhood to neighborhood and look for absorption and then go into the details. Like we were just looking at why competitors may or may not be doing well. So we go to Quiet Waters Park area here, and there's 4 places available for these date ranges. We go back to I'm Flexible and see what pops up. There's 30. So there's 30 units out of here. Let's back out a little bit more. Okay, there's 55 in this area. And we go back to this date, we go from 55 to 13. So this area is about 80% occupied too. Now on the water here, there's 97. The map keeps moving around, which is no fun. So let's see if we can get it to stick around. Okay, yeah, so there's 596. Stop it. It keeps trying to push stuff. So in this area here, there's 388 places, but it wants to show us everything on the water here. Notice that? But then we go to last minute to this weekend, and there's 60 places. So what was that, 588 or 388? 388 and then 60? Yeah, okay. So 388 and then 60, that would mean, again, about 80% absorption, right, for the weekend. So to recap what we've seen so far is Airbnb, we keep seeing Airbnb is pushing on the water, right? Because Airbnb knows this is the stuff that always books up at the highest percentage. So Airbnb wants us to see these. Whether or not we can find property that fits here is going to be what's really tough. What we see is we do need a quality of design in order for them to get booked. We need to be priced appropriate because even in Coconut Creek, those properties do have bookings, which means we can do some stuff off the water and we can find pockets that have absorption. But Airbnb's pushing these for a reason, and that's probably because they make the most money per year because people want to be by the water. And when there's oversupply and demand shrinks, then you're competing on price, and having location as an amenity is likely what keeps you booked. It's possible, like right over here, you might be able to find stuff over here. These look like largely like condos. This looks like an apartment complex potentially. Now, the thing though is we need to research who manages these apartment complexes, how many units are in this building, and whether or not there's room to get in. I have a problem with these types of properties because there's so much competition already, right? Already in those buildings.
Now I know what you might be thinking so far. Wow, Sean is so pessimistic about this part of the world right now. Well, the truth is, when we're doing market research, this is the perspective we need to take. We want to disqualify as much as we can in order to find the best one property because we haven't spent any money yet. Once we spend that money, we are married to the product. And spoiler alert, by the end of this video, we do find a really cool opportunity for the students, so stick around to see that. For context, I know this video seems to move quite quick, but there's 10 years of experience behind this market research, and the student has already taken some of the program already, so we expect him to know enough to follow along. My approach to market research will change based on my initial findings, and so market to market, whether it's a beach place like Florida or if it's Dubai or Chicago, it all does change. So if you want extra context, there will be a link down below to talk to my team so I can help you do market research to find your next property. But back to the video.
Now, with that said, instead of apartments, let's go look at houses. Let's go and look at 4 bedrooms. Because right now, what I'm finding in Pompano area is a lot of this commoditized product by the water. Like some of the stuff's cheaply designed, but it's all cheaply priced. And there's really no way to prove that an interesting product is getting paid well enough. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
This is where I think we have more of an opportunity, right? Now that we back out, you're gonna notice there's actually dots that are away from the water. So location isn't as important. We even see some dots over here by Coconut Creek.
Those are like hot zones, right?
The dots are just what Airbnb is serving first. Where there's a large cluster, a large cluster of units might mean that people have found things to be profitable. So people have started to congregate there. That is a sign. Yeah, the fact that all these properties exist though, may also just be because there's probably a congregation of listings there because they have the amenities. They're by the water, right? So this listing here has a pool. It's also on the canal. That's a big deal. Now, this property also has a piano. Good for them. When we look at their calendar, we're probably going to see, we got some January bookings. I know February is kind of rough. So let's take a look. So far, the fact that I'm not seeing February bookings for the stuff that I'm clicking on makes me believe that Pompano Beach isn't where I would like to go. So far, which one did we just click on here? This one has 97 reviews. So this one has 120. This one's got 240, but this one's got a super cool vibe. It shows a boat, has this like thatched tiki bar thing, right? So this one's a total unique vibe. The question is where can we compete? What can we replicate? And so this one, hot tub, free kayaks on the water, right? Very cool. I like that this photo is not their first photo. This is a cool way to add amenities into the photos. And because of that, they've got some bookings all the way into March, April. This one wins. The question also is at what price? They're $438 on those days. February weekdays, $497. March weekdays should be like $750. No, $560. Okay, because March is their peak. They should be priced for it, $510. Okay, cool. So this one is working. We could actually look at the pricing strategy, look at the rates, and really kind of start to extrapolate out what they're making. And the question will be, can you find a house like this? Given their rates like at 500 a night for peak, they're probably going to go for like 180 in their slowest season. So their low months probably will make 4,000, and their peak months they can make 20 probably. 500 times 10 is so they might make 17,000 peak season, 17. So 4 to 17. I'd want to get this house at about 4,000 or 4,500 in rent if I could, right? That's what I would try to get it for, just so that way I'm not overexposed in slow season and stuff like that. But this little house with the tiki thing, because again, you also have to invest into the property and everything they've added. That's also important, right? So there's so far we found an opportunity-ish, but so far in Pompano Beach, this search here, we out of the top, this first one we clicked doesn't have any February bookings, which means that they're priced wrong or something. So there seems like there could be an absence of demand there. If we maybe zoom in somewhere else and see, what exists, like we actually look at this Coconut Creek area, we can see if any of these properties so far not okay. So this one with a pool, that'll matter. This one seems kind of cool, and it does have more reviews than other ones. So good job on the accent wall there. This one's got 50 reviews, has a little pool. So we're seeing pools lead to reviews. Let's take a look at this one. The first photo isn't the best. The color doesn't pop enough. It's like a low saturation, kind of almost like they did it in a cloudy day. And it's generic enough, but it's a 4-bedroom house. Okay, so that's important. 4-bedroom house, 10 guests. They don't have any bookings, so that's sad. So they have past bookings, but they really don't have any now. We're trying to identify a middle quality that we can beat. That's an important thing. If we look at only the very best and most beautiful listings for data, that gives us a big challenge, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So this one looks like they've got a multi-month stay, or it's blocked, but they do have some January bookings, so that's good. Now, the thing about this though, they're only $275 a night here. Let's go into March. Maybe the problem is also that they're priced in like really low prices. $225. Yeah, so this person's underpriced. That means this person has an opportunity to make more money. They just aren't. Let's look at their reviews. There's one thing we do want to see. When somebody's low priced, we want to see that they've got a decent amount of June, July, August, October bookings, right? That's what we want to see as a sign. Okay, this is the one. So 2 days ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, tons of, 3 weeks ago, October, not a lot of October. Okay. September, nope. August. Okay, that's good. July. Oh, June. Okay. So they don't have as many reviews as I was hoping, but they do have some, right? They're not going any months without bookings, like May. They got 4 in May, couple in June, few in July, couple in August or September, right? So they are getting slow season bookings, meaning that the prices that these guys are running actually works in slow season to some degree. Okay. So when we go look at their slow season prices, like we go rip into June, not in their photos, but we go rip into June here, we're able to state that, oh, look, they even got a May booking already. So that's cool. So these prices at 225, they managed to get a May booking already, which is going into their slow season, right? Well,
That means their price is way too.
So this person, with that said, if they're going to get booked 80% of May for 225, well, let's say that's okay. So 10 days is 2,200. So 20 days is 4,500, and like say 23 days. So they're about 5,000 in May. Right. So now let's do the math. This looks like they are right on the money for this chart. 2, 3, 4, 5 May. They're 5,000 in May. So this one actually, you can just follow the chart identically. They make 5,000 in May. They'll make 12,500 in March. They'll make only 3,500 in September. Because of this, I'd want my rent again below 4,000 a month for this type of property. Was it this one? Okay, so this property, if you could find a property like this, it's a 4-bedroom with a pool on the west side of the turnpike here in the Coconut Creek. So over here, if you could find a property over here that's a 4-bedroom for under 4,000 with a pool, that would work. But now here's the thing: being on this side of the water might actually work too, right? So now this one's got 244 reviews. Are you seeing kind of my logical flow as I'm going through this stuff? Looking at
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so good. I want to summarize some things because I want you to be able to do what I'm doing. When I see that somebody's prices are too high and they're empty, I then go here and go, what months are they too high in? If they're too high in their slow season, that's usually just a pricing mistake. If they're in peak season and their prices are too high that they're not getting booked, that's extremely concerning, meaning this person's not getting any action. So the Coconut Creek apartments we just saw, they're priced too high, so high that their peak season's not getting booked. They're just completely out of touch completely. But if somebody's prices were too high in June and they don't have any bookings, well, they're out of touch with seasonality as a whole. If somebody's prices are too low, or they've got a lot of bookings in January, February, March, if they've got a ton of bookings here, and I have a suspicion that their prices are too low, well, then I'm going to go look at the rest of the year, and if their prices are the same, then yeah, their prices are too low because they're priced for the whole year. And we even saw proof that they got a booking in May at these lower prices, meaning that if they can get a booking in May for 225, they should be able to get a booking in February, March for 400, right? So I'm looking at people's calendars and seasonality to determine where they're making their pricing mistakes, to know what kind of competition we're up against, what the property really could actually make if they made changes. So we've identified that this property could make a certain amount of money if they made changes. But now we repeat this process and keep looking at more houses. So now this house here, again, we're going to do the same thing. Now they're not completely booked, which means they're not priced too low for their product. So let's take a look at February here, because the other property was completely jammed, right? So they're $299, and March, they don't have any action in March yet. $349. Okay, so but they do have a booking in April. So let's see. This property is more pretty, by the way, than the other one, but it sleeps less people too. It only sleeps 6. It doesn't sleep 10. They're in the 250s here, and they got booking. They got a booking because this one's prettier. So this listing is more pretty outside. Only sleep 6 and got 250 something in April. But because they only sleep 6, it could also be why they're not getting the prices that they want here. So they might actually be capped out at like 300, 320.
Yeah.
Weekdays they're here. Let's look at their weekend prices. They might be out of touch with weekend prices, and that might be their problem. So these weekends are booked. So that's a good sign. Their February weekends are booked. January is still coming out of slow season. So they might be priced a little high for this. If we're going to look at this, if they're capturing $299 in February, and that's like around 10, January looks like it's around 8, maybe 8. That's 20% reduction. So if they're getting traction at $299 here, then they probably should be like at $240 here. These days should be $240. And since the days weren't $240 and they haven't been $240, maybe that's why they don't have any bookings, right? So yeah, they're probably priced a little bit inappropriately, but we can still do our math using VRBO and what we know. The reason why they don't have a full calendar here is because they're overpriced by maybe 10%. Because for 6 people, we can also then determine, we can actually tether 6 people, this type of quality, they could be doing like $240 a day in January, $299 in February. And thus in March, they could do a little bit more. There's a period of time in March that they can do more, whatever the spring break is. They probably can do something like 325 most days in March, but then for spring break, they could probably go up to like 500, 600. This is probably how that would work, something like that. They're a little bit out of touch with prices slightly, but also March is far enough in advance for only 6 guests that we don't need to be seeing bookings in March yet. If this one slept 10, we'd want to see more lead time because bigger groups book farther in advance. So let's see if we find another one. This one's not as pretty, but also has a lot of reviews. Let's see how many people they can sleep and etc. So this one sleeps 8. Terrible furniture. So far, that's not good, but they have a pool, but it's generic. It's not pretty. They do have bookings in January, and they're at 264. So now we're starting to see something. There are price points that are getting met based on size, not based on quality. And going into peak season, people need properties because there's just nothing available. So people will start to book based on price. So like here in March, there's a booking here in March, and they booked because of price, most likely size and price. So they're only in the 280s here. They're about 400 on the weekends, roughly, a little bit over 400. Because if they're 280 on weekdays and they're 370 over 3 days now, 280 times 3, you take that, and then you take 370 times 3. 370 times 3 is the total price for this reservation. Let's do the math. That's 1110. But we do these 3 days here, and it's 967 for 3 weekdays. So 1110, 967. That's actually $150 difference, and the $150 difference can be attributed to the 2 weekdays. So we divide that 150 by 2. That's $75 difference. So they're 322 on weekdays and 400 on weekends. You notice how I did that math?
You'd have to slightly go over that again.
Okay. I'll go over it again one more time. So we have three weekdays. Let's call that variable A if we're doing algebra, right? We have 3A equals 967, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got 2B plus 1A when we do a 3-day Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 2 of those are weekends. So those are 2B plus 1A equals 1110.
Yeah.
So then if we do, 2B plus 1A equals 1110, but 3A equals 967, essentially that's what the algebra would look like. The total difference in price is 150, right? Between 916, okay? And the only difference is not the 1A, because there's 3A versus 1A. Subtract 1A from both sides. So now 2B minus 2A equals 150. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Okay, yeah, algebra wise. Sorry for anybody if that made it even more complex, but watch that again if you want. 3 days is 110. That includes 2 weekends. These 3 days is 960, which is all weekdays. We take that difference in price, which is 150, and we know that there's 2 weekends in that difference in price, so we divide it by 2. So every weekend day is different by $75. So 322 for weekdays and 400 for weekends. Hope you guys followed along with that. But the reason why we have to do this is it lets us know what somebody's weekend prices and weekday prices are. And that way, when we see this here, see this February, they've got a booking for this weekend, we want to know what that's for, right? So when we do the math here and look at their weekend prices, we want to know, okay, their weekends are booking at 400 and their weekdays are booking at 320. Right. So when we do this, they've got to check in on Thursday, and that booking is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, checks out on Sunday. So we can know what the total amount of money they collected for that is. But we can also know that they got all of these days for whatever those totals are, and we can actually start to do the math on what they're collecting. But to regress from how to find out what weekend prices are, the thing that we can know from this listing is because this listing isn't special, right? The very first 5 photos are ugly. This is not pretty. I didn't have to click on this to know that the rest of the listing would not be pretty because they made a huge mistake. These 5 photos are supposed to be the best 5 photos that you have to make people excited. They screwed that up. This listing is up, pardon my French, guys, and this listing is getting bookings in peak season at 322 and 400. We know that they're getting bookings. So for a group of 8 guests with a pool 4-bedroom, you can guarantee action at 322 and 400 in peak season out of sheer necessity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now, we also want to determine out of sheer necessity, like, is there enough demand that people book out of sheer necessity out here? I can't really know, but we can go to their reviews and find out if people are booking this property. So we've got a couple bookings in August, a couple bookings in October, a couple bookings in July, 3 in July, a few in June, 4 in June, actually. Cool. Okay, so this property is getting booked in slow season, and we do want to know at what prices. This may not be the most accurate because they're probably dropping their rates to get bookings. We'll check here in a second. But they're 266 in May right now. Let's see what they're doing with their last minute inventory here. 250. Okay, so they're not going down too much last minute. That's the kind of important now. We may have found that a listing of this size will make about $250 a day, even in slow season, some of the months or some of the dates, but they'll still end up like maybe 40% occupied, right? So we would still have to fight on price in slow season. But let's do some math now. If we know that this place is going to get booked at 400 and 322, and they're not going to change their prices, we can do 400 times 2 is 800 per weekend, which gives us 3,200 for 4 weekends. 325 times 5 is about 1,600. And if they get booked for, like, say, 15 of their weekdays, that is going to be 4,800. So let's award them a couple more days because, they could get more full. So 900. So they're 5,700 plus 32 might be what I total this person at. So 57 plus 32 is about $9,000 in March. So this listing currently is going to make about 9,000 in March, which is 25% off of this with the way that I just priced them. A really ugly property, 4-bedroom, will do about 9,000 here. That means that, if we do the same thing where we take 25% off here, we got to remove about 700 plus half of that, about 900. So they'll make about 2,500 or 2,700 in September. It would be this house. So now the thing is, this house really, really screwed up its style, right? This place is ugly, terribly ugly. And if they did anything at all to make the home, this is not the one. Where are you, ugly? There. So if this house did anything at all to become pretty, it would more perform, right? So what we can do is we could look at this one. We've determined what a listing will make bare bones, and that can give us like a indication of what is safe to pay rent on. So if we went here, and I went to, let's say we go to Pompano, right? And we search, and I go for beds and baths, and I go for 4 bedrooms with a pool, and I just look somewhere completely like west. By that, more must-have pool. Where are you at? 1, 2, 3 major roads. We're still looking at over here. We're gonna look here between. Actually, hold on. That's not Dixie Highway. Yeah, this is the Turnpike. Okay, cool. Okay, the Turnpike is actually west of 95, isn't it? Turnpike might be all the way over here. Yeah, Coconut Creek. Okay, so now we go over here. We look for 4-bedroom houses with a pool. This one, it's already a little too expensive. Oh, hey, look, this is the Airbnb we found. Look at that. They're putting it on the market. We saw that. So this one, they're putting it on Airbnb because they failed, right? And remember, we looked at that one. I think we looked at this one and determined that they just didn't have any bookings. Location is probably part of it. We can actually look to see if they've screwed up their pricing strategy, stuff like that. They've got a 5-night minimum, which, of course is going to kind of really affect them. So yeah, 379. This place is cute. Okay, so 379. If we try to do the same, remember the same math we're going to do? Actually, hold on. So 379 there. What was it? But then 360 was over here. No, same. Okay, so yeah, they've got same weekend, same weekday prices. They can sleep 8. We should be seeing bookings in February. The 5-day minimum stay might be one of their problems. They're not getting action at 379. Let's look at their prices here. So they're actually screwing up on their prices, right? And that's, yeah, they're completely butchering their rates, and that's part of their issue here. What we noticed is that this property will book at 322 on weekdays and 400 on weekends. We've already noticed that with March here, right? And we can identify what prices they're collecting in January, right? This bare bottom one, and with like minimum length of stays and stuff. So they're getting 250 here. So this property here is getting 250 last minute. They're getting their weekend prices in January are probably going to look more like, yeah, maybe more like the 340 here. And they're still getting bookings, right? This ugly one is still getting bookings. So this one here is priced too high with a combination of higher prices on weekdays and minimum length of stay requirements that are just unfriendly. That's their issue here. They've done a better job with design. They've just completely whiffed. You know what I would do is I would contact this owner. You could probably even try to get them to like allow you to like run it, see if they have a different co-host that's just been failing, and to convince them that you can run it better. That's probably what I would do. You say, hey, I see that you have this listed on Airbnb. I see you're making some mistakes. Do you have a tenant, or is this you trying to run it? Because I can actually fix it for you. You just give them a pitch and try to pitch them co-hosting. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay, be like, you've already got the furniture in there. You already sunk costs. The place is beautiful, but you're just disconnected from the market and what the market's going to take. You need somebody who can operate this and understands pricing strategy. And so ask them if they have a co-host, if they're the one running it, if it was a tenant, whatever, and tell them, that this property could actually perform, and you can show them listings like this ugly one that have some bookings, even though like they have bookings, even though they're ugly. You can show them like this. Let me give you this listing as a share. So that way you can show them this if you make this presentation. But when you make this presentation to the owner, if they have a tenant, your goal will be to say to them, your tenant screwed up, but I think you should take this over and I can run it with you if they have a tenant. And be like, that includes, so for this listing here, it would include buying out their furniture. Like, I think you should buy out your tenant's furniture, keep it as is, and run it as a short-term rental, and I'll run it with you. They're just, if they're getting out because they're failing, it's because they're disconnected from the market and they don't know what the market can actually take. So what do you say? I wouldn't try to rent it per se, because we still kind of have to prove it. I don't know if I'd want to pay, like, if I came in to this unit, I would still want to pay under 4,000. I would want my rent, because this ugly one would only do like 26 or 2,700 here. I'd want my rent around 3,000 for property over here. Right? That's what I would want, because my logic for that is I found a property that I know can make money as an ugly property, but based on its current prices, I don't want to pay an extra $1,000 a month when I've just proven a property will do a certain amount of money. Sure, the property's ugly, and that actually makes it very likely that we'll succeed. This ugly property will do good, so we'll do better. But this ugly property is still only going to do 9,000 at top and 2,600 at bottom. So I'm still going to search for rent that allows me to feel safe with my investment if my investment looked like this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So if we found another property that's better, that we could still do the same job. So if we kept looking around at houses and we found one that did better than this one, that had similar size, 4-bedroom, pool, even if it had better design, right? Of course, because in order to do better, it needs to have better design. If we do our homework on this property, so far, this place hasn't done anything expensive. All of its gimmicks are cheap at a first glance. It's not expensive. The furniture outside's not expensive. They just got some floaties and they've got some color, right? This is still a cheap attempt at being an Airbnb. I want you to notice that first, right? Do not get distracted by all the color. Nothing in this property actually costs any money of significance at all, right? So now, does this cheap attempt, which is a low investment cost, does it lead to, and no, actually it doesn't. So people know that this place is too cheap, and let's see what their prices are, because they want a lot of money, right? 450, 428. So this property is not meeting the market at its current asking, which then, of course, again, this is an example. We can't pay more in rent because we can't prove that something makes more money yet. We keep going. This one's too new, unfortunately. This one, We can look at this one. This one, again, is nothing special. They have done what we call eye candy. There's really no color in the pool, anything like that. The home looks like it's decently renovated. Okay, this looks like situationally available. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. And now we're doing research to decide if we're going to take over this property as a rental, we need to be able to prove that we can pay that rent, right? That's another thing we're doing now. Looking at this listing, it's more cute, right? The fence and the plants and stuff. They're still not doing anything extravagant, but it's more cute. And it's got bookings. That's good. Okay, cool. So now, what are they collecting in February? They use a 3-night minimum, not a 5. The other one had a 5, so that was an issue. So they're 310 on weekdays. Now remember, we're going to look at weekends by doing the difference in price minus 2. We got 988 versus 929. So 88 and 29 is what, like 50 or $60 basically. So $60 divided by 2, their weekend price is $30 higher than their weekday price. So their weekend price is 340. Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Right. So they're 340 on weekdays, weekends, 310 on weekdays. That's in February. Let's see if they're changing their prices. 290. So their price is lower in March, which actually is a huge mistake because March is more peak. So they're making pricing mistakes. They're 290 out here and probably 290 in May. So okay. So it looks like their prices, they have some weird pricing logic where they're probably around 290, 299, whatever out here. What probably happened is they started to get booked and they decided to raise their rates, maybe because February got full, or there's some sort of maybe special event that they're trying to raise their rates for. But yeah, they're down to 269 here. Their weekends are getting booked and they're not lowering their prices last minute, but the weekends are all booked at whatever those rates are. They're not going below 269, which is why their weekdays are not full here, but they could get these booked probably if they just drop down to 200, right? But this 3-bedroom property is getting booked at 340 on the weekends, 310 on the weekdays with a cuter design style. October, only one in August, July, okay, and no, nothing in June, right? So they were price disconnected in June, which is the worst month aside from September, right? So they're not running a perfect pricing strategy. So listing this size, 6 people, decent, like just decent look, not screwing everything up. They're making 310 and 340, right? That would then lead them to make in their peak season about 10,000. So this listing might make like 10,000 a month in March, which is still not much more than the ugly 4-bedroom, right? So we're still having a hard time justifying spending $4,000 in rent. So my conclusion so far is for this listing, I would offer to co-host. I'd find out if there's a previous tenant or if they're the ones operating it, or if they have a co-host that was failing, pitch them that you know why they're making a mistake. Obviously it's pricing, but you don't want to get too much into the details. Just say, I'll meet with you, kind of go over what my findings are. And I'd like to operate this with you as your professional operator. If it's a tenant that's leaving, I think we should just buy out their furniture and let you continue to run it, and I'll run it for you at a small percentage. If you continue to do market research and find other properties that are 4 bedrooms that look like that they would do at least what VRBO says, then yes, you could. If you can outperform these VRBO numbers, where the peak month maybe is like 14,000, then I'd be comfortable paying 4,000 for a 4-bedroom house over in the Coconut Creek area. Does that make sense? So the reason why I wanted to like do this with you, like show you my process, is like this has already taken an hour, and your token's actually only for 30 minutes, by the way. But I knew this was going to take a little while, and we won't be able to go into everything you needed. But I'd like you to take what I've given you now. I'd like you to then like say, okay, I'm going to look at apartments, but I'm going to look at apartments in different neighborhoods and try to identify their occupancy, if they've got any future lead time bookings, what their prices are. I'd like you to look at 4-bedroom houses in different areas / neighborhoods and try to identify what I'm doing. I want you to be able to go, I think this property is making this much money in peak season, so I think it's making this much money in slow season. I want you to be able to say, this listing's prices are just too low all year, and that's why it's booked in peak season. I want you to be able to determine those things. And then that way, as you go through this, like we've already found a property that you might be able to take over. That's a win today, right? We found out that a 4-bedroom property is probably worth doing, because even an ugly one is making a minimum number of money or amount of money, but we still want to feel confident enough in that upper range of price that we pay the rent that somebody's going to ask. And currently, if the rents are going to be 4,000, we need to find other 4-bedroom properties that are doing better but aren't amazing looking. If that ugly property was doing any better at all, right, that was collecting like even $20 more a day, if that super ugly property was doing even any better at all, it would make us comfortable enough to even rent the property that's being put up on the market, because they're just out of touch on price, and we know that their bottom price would still be high enough that we could profit, right? I want you to be able to like collect a few Airbnbs next based on like the properties you're looking at. Go find some Airbnbs that you think are relevant. Maybe do this for Delray Beach, like we talked about before, and tell me how profitable you think some of these listings are, and whether you think a Zillow is a good choice based on your findings. And we can go over that data, and I can tell you if you came up to the same conclusion I would make or a similar one.